Well, hello, and welcome to today's show. It is Wednesday, August 5th, and I've got the great Glenn Kirshner joining me, the former federal prosecutor. Our conversation begins at about 25 minutes in. Also got my conversation with Chicago's Joan Esposito. She hosts a radio show in Chicago and invites me to join her as her guest. So I just figured I'd tag on that conversation if you want to listen to it. You can't watch it. I don't have a video version of it. So if you're watching on YouTube or elsewhere and you wanted to hear that conversation, then you'll have to listen to it on the podcast, which is available everywhere podcasts are available. But now it's also a video podcast most days. And I try to be here every day, every morning by around 7 a.m. with your headlines and a clip show. Lately, I've been getting up a little later, but I'm getting better and better at this. So thank you very much for joining me, for pressing play, for liking and subscribing the channel. I can't do it without your support. Patreon.com/Pete Dominick is where to go to get a paid subscription, or Substack. Increasingly more people getting a paid subscription on Substack at StandUpWithPete. Okay. Well, this might be my last show for the week, meaning I won't produce shows Thursday and Friday. Definitely I'll have a couple guest interviews I'll be posting, but I am about to say goodbye to my 18-year-old daughter and my ex-wife, who I'm very close with. They are both leaving for vacation together with my older daughter, Ava, and her boyfriend, and then my daughter is moving to University of Amsterdam, to go to school there, and my ex-wife is moving to Florence, Italy. So if you know anybody in either of those towns, let me know. If you're going to be in either of those towns, let me know. But it's a lot, and emotionally, this is a huge moment for everyone, but for me personally, it's just going to be a little harder to get the show done, much less tomorrow night's hangout. We'll see where I'm at with that. I probably won't show up for much or any of that tomorrow night. I'll let you know. It depends on where I'm at. They leave around 4 o'clock on Thursday, the 6th of August, a date I've had on my calendar for a really long time. Anyway, thank you for all of your support. I'm in a overwhelmingly emotionally and mentally good place, but this is hard, and I'm just getting ready to be without my girls, who have meant so much to me and given me so much purpose, responsibility, and I've held so much space for them in my life. But you give your kids two things, roots and wings. Who sent me that? A smart listener of this podcast. All right. Well, that's enough about me. Let's get to what is happening in the rest of the world. I've got your headlines. Then we'll do the clip show and my conversation with Glenn Kirshner and my interview with Joan Esposito, all coming up. Here we go. Here are the stories I've gathered for you from Wednesday, August 5th, 2026. It's just before 6 in the morning, and I'm putting a cap on it. Here's what I got. Last night, of course, Kansas, Michigan, Missouri, Virginia, and Washington all held primaries that went down to 3 a.m. for the big one that everybody was watching in Michigan for Democratic Senator there. Abdul al-Sayed won. It was a slugfest of a Democratic Senate primary, clinching the nomination in a close race over Congresswoman Haley Stevens. El-Sayed overcame a nearly $65 million onslaught of outside money and establishment that had rallied around Haley Stevens. You had Gretchen Whitmer supporting her late last month, which was seen as a last-ditch effort to stop him from winning. He overcame nearly a $65 million. Wow, that is so much. It's 11-1. Here it is, 11-1 he was outspent. And they spent nearly 9 times as much on advertising as al-Sayed and his coalition of groups did. So that was a big one last night in Michigan. In Missouri, Wesley Bell decisively defeated Cori Bush in a race which AIPAC Alliance Super PAC dumped $3 million to stop Cori Bush. They helped Wesley Bell win her seat the first time and the second time. It was billed as a competitive but called almost immediately, with Wesley Bell cruising to a landslide victory of more than 50 percentage points over Cori Bush. The results of that hotly anticipated race, where a lot of money was spent as well. Also in Missouri yesterday, they defeated a ballot measure that was put on the ballot by Republicans that would have created the nation's most difficult standard for citizen initiatives to amend the state constitution. Republicans didn't want any more of these initiatives to have a popular vote on, because that meant they would lose because their ideas are unpopular. Well, the other one was the other thing that they lost last night, an initiative to amend the state constitution. The other ballot initiative was a proposal to eliminate the state income tax. So both those went down in flames. What else do I have for you here? The CDC is adding 6 more states to the cyclosporiasis outbreak linked to iceberg lettuce, widening the number of affected states to 15. Now, the largest outbreak caused by foodborne illness in recent U.S. history. It's produced more than 10,468 laboratory confirmed cases, 12,255 suspected cases nationwide, but who knows if those measures are accurate because it's the CDC taking them, and we know how reliable they used to be but are no longer. The agency's surveillance lags state reporting by several weeks, which I think is always the case, but not good. 2 people have even died. Apparently. Let's go to the Middle East, where negotiations apparently are progressing, according to one report I read. I think this is the New York Times, that says a Qatari official said that talks to reopen the Strait, which has been blockaded by Iran since February, were in their very progressive stages, quote, very progressive stages, unquote. And a draft language of a possible agreement had been, quote, circulated among the parties. All right, well, the hell's that supposed to mean? Also, a British maritime monitoring agency said a cargo ship reported being hit by a projectile overnight off the coast of Oman in the Strait of Hormuz. Who done it? Who did that? I wonder who did that. Apparently, the U.S. military has exhausted nearly 80% of its interceptors for key missile defense system, as senior U.S. military commanders are warning that the Pentagon's munitions stockpile is dangerously low. Okay, no big deal. Apparently, the U.S. Army has also used virtually all of its highly accurate long-range surface-to-air missiles during the conflict. The stockpile shortage should also impact our ability to fight potential future war with China, Russia, North Korea, any of these other countries, because we're out of missiles because this stupid fuck launched all of the missiles and lost things we used to have. It's just terrible waste of money, life, and obviously weapons. The lack of interceptors mean that conventional attacks can now backfire if the suicide drones start making it through en masse, is what one expert was quoted in this article I read about at the New York Times. Well, the Senate Judiciary Committee on Tuesday advanced Todd Blanche's nomination as Attorney General to the Senate, which could hold a vote to confirm him as early as this week. The panel approved Blanche's nomination on a 12-10 party line, and it's just disgraceful. Absolutely disgraceful. The most corrupt nominee ever, and there is plenty more to say about it, but I'll let the senators who were on that committee yesterday say it for you coming up in the clip show. 25 Democratic-led states are suing the Trump administration over the latest round of tariffs. How about that? Democratic attorneys general argue that the Trump administration is using forced labor as a pretext to revive import taxes. The Supreme Court struck down, calling them a pretext for replacing import taxes that the Supreme Court struck down in February. The state law follows 2 other lawsuits filed, the Court of International Trade in July by small businesses, that also challenged 301 of these tariffs. So that is a story to watch. So is this one. The Department of Homeland Security apparently has an initiative that should get a lot more attention. The Wall Street Journal is reporting this, and it's a really important story. In recent months, apparently ICE has deployed a round-the-clock digital dragnet to scour the public internet from Facebook to Instagram to X. What are they looking for? They're looking for speech that could endanger the Department of Homeland Security's mission. To unmask anonymous online critics, DHS has sent hundreds of subpoenas to social media companies. According to people familiar with the matter, its agents have tracked down Americans at work and on the road, asking them to sign letters acknowledging that their online speech about ICE may be a crime. Wow, this is a blockbuster story from the Wall Street Journal that everybody needs to be talking about on their shows, and we'll see if they are. We'll see if I am. Also, stories, a couple more quickly. Stocks in the U.S. reached a record high yesterday, which is a lot to say and talk about why, but I'm very worried about the bubble that's about to burst. Saudi Aramco the world's largest oil company, reported a 33% increase in profit despite major disruptions to its supply routes during the Iran war. Also, Elon Musk is now littering the moon. That's right. A SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket is going to make an unplanned crash into the moon, traveling at 5,400 miles per hour. And it's like, I don't know how many tons it is. I think it's like 4 tons or something. I don't know if it's hit the moon yet or not, but he's shit all over America, so he had to find somewhere else. That sucks. Federal officials said that a 41-year-old man from El Salvador, Edwin Lopez Cornejo, died over the weekend, speaking of things that's sucking, at this federal detention facility in Newark that you've heard so much about. So there's going to probably be more protests there and more attention and scrutiny, hopefully, on that detention facility. And authorities in Spokane, Washington arrested a 37-year-old man suspected of starting one of the major fires. Investigators appear to have said it was intentionally set. This guy was carrying waterproof matches and a butane lighter when he was arrested. Well, those are a couple things not to have on you. If you're an arsonist, maybe empty your pockets. Waterproof matches. More than 700 buildings in the area have been destroyed by 3 wildfires. More than 65,000 people have been evacuated. Apparently this guy has been accused of or convicted of starting fires in the past. What kind of person? What is that? Arson. I don't know. I don't know that psychological profile. I don't know who does that, but it's real upsetting. But here's something that's not to end the news on. The 4th season of the feel-good show Ted Lasso premiered on Apple TV. The first of 10 episodes has been posted. I'll be watching it, but I think I'm going to wait for a few weeks till there's a few more episodes out and then watch them all together. There you go, folks. Those are your headlines for Wednesday, August 5th. Can't do it without you. Patreon.com/Pete Dominick. Now time for your clips. Here's what I was watching yesterday. It was just after, I think, 1 a.m. when Abdul El Sayed went on stage at the Majestic Theater in...
Now we are on track to vastly outvote the historical numbers that we should have expected. We all knew they were going to spend their money. We didn't know they were going to spend $70 million of their money. We didn't know that they were going to outspend us $11 to $1. And yet we're still standing. We can't control the past 250 years. What we can do is build the next 250. And to do that, it's going to mean movements like this one, of the people, by the people, and for the people, with a distinct purpose of taking on the challenges that we face.
Well, there you go. A very slim margin that separated Saeed and Haley Stevens. It was 48.6% to 47.3%. He got 735,625 votes. She got 716,222 votes. But Mallory McMorrow, who dropped out of the race weeks ago, also got 60,000 votes and won 4% of the vote, which is more than the margin of difference for them. So she did the right thing, but 60,000 people basically threw away their vote, it would seem, there in Michigan. All right. What's next? Jon Stewart had John Fetterman on, and it was, well, take a watch and a listen.
So for you could agree with them 90%, but Israel is the red line.
Absolutely. Israel for me. Like I can't ever turn my back to Israel after where it's at.
So, and I mean no disrespect on this, but that is not our country. You're saying that these candidates may have great ideas for our economy. They may want to do the exact same thing you want to do in terms of getting money out of politics. They may want to increase the social safety net. They may want to change the balance of power from capital back to labor. But if they don't agree with you on Israel, you don't want them in your party.
Well, I don't know who you're referencing to specifically.
No, I'm referencing what you just said.
Name
so in other words, Syed or AOC or Bernie Sanders, I assume you agree with a lot of what they say economically.
And what I'm saying is, like, if you are a DSA member, if you are a member of a specific political party, run under your own banner. And now I think Bill Maher said something very insightful. He said, the DSA are colonizing the Democratic Party. So just be Democrats if you're going to run under the Democratic Party for that. Why have a DSA party for overall? So run on that, and you all understand.
It's just an organization. It's not, we have a two-party system. It's like the Freedom Caucus in the Republican Party. There's Randy Fine and Ogles and all these nutbags that are also part of an area, and Republicans, I'm sure, may not agree with all of them on all kinds of things, but there is no other party. I guess you could try it, but my point is, if you don't disagree with them on a lot of things, why not use some of that energy? And even like Mamdani in New York is DSA, but there are things in the DSA platform that he disagrees with. And I'm assuming there's probably things in the Democratic platform that you might disagree with, but you don't disavow the entire thing. You're literally saying we can all have discussions, except when it comes to Israel, which is not America. It seems like a weird line to draw.
Well, so then, I don't think that's weird. I think what history demonstrates is that when people or a government or people turn their back to the Jewish community, things end really badly, and it's a dangerous.
Jewish community and Israel are not the same thing, brother man. They're not. That is not the same thing.
No. It's like, hey, it's like if I have to pick a side for after 10/7 and after Iran. I'm always going to stand with Israel. I'm always going to vote and support whatever that's necessary to protect themselves and to prosecute Hamas.
Wow. I mean, wow. That's not our country, Jon Stewart said. And the Jewish community is not Israel, and Israel is not the Jewish community. He was obviously offended by that, as many Jewish Americans are, the conflation that always gets made. But Stewart does what a lot of other journalists can't do, often is the case with him. And he gets these high-profile people on, and he asks them the right questions and has the conversation in such a way that he's able to draw their answers out or let them kind of hang themselves there, which I think Fetterman did in that interview, where Stewart was trying to find the delineation between the DSA stance on any number of issues and their foreign policy stance, specifically vis-a-vis Israel. And he couldn't find the difference in policy that he was trying to find. And all it watered down to seemingly was Israel in that interview. Okay, well, let me move on here in the clip show, because I've got a lot of different senators from yesterday who were on that committee, Judiciary Committee, that would had to confirm out of the committee Todd Blanche for his new job as the Attorney General. Just crazy, hard to believe that Trump's former personal attorney is now all of our attorney. All right, here is Senator Richard Blumenthal. I thought this was really good because he actually said something that I didn't hear any other senators saying, a concern at least.
The most sacred right we have in a democracy is the right to vote freely and fairly. My fear is Todd Blanche will be Donald Trump's lawyer in suppressing the vote and distorting the count. He will defend Donald Trump. The president sends militia or ICE agents or the National Guard to the polls to disrupt the elections. He will defend Donald Trump if he seeks to distort the count after the election, put Donald Trump ahead of the American people and the right to vote. I cannot support him. I regret that this committee will, in effect, betray its trust in the party line vote that is to follow and approve Todd Blanche, Attorney General of the United States.
All right, Richard Blumenthal of Connecticut. Let's go to another Northeast Democrat, Sheldon Whitehouse in Rhode Island.
Neither of which has any legal effect whatsoever. They are decorative. So what problems do they leave behind? Well, one is, can you trust Todd Blanche going forward? I will tell you, I do not. I think it would be unreasonable to trust him going forward. There is enough weasel room in these documents to drive a truck through. And what might that truck look like? Well, you could get rid of the anti-weaponization fund for $1.776 billion, and in a month, put out the Trump Justice Fund for $1.9 billion. Nothing in this document prevents anything like that from happening. You could open a drive-up window at the Department of Justice for cop beaters from January 6th to come through and get friendly Federal Tort Claims Act settlements from the Department of Justice. They're already handing out settlements to Trump's allies. What's to prevent the drive-up window? Come on in. Here we are. We got the friendly form for you to file, and here's a check. Nothing prevents the cop beaters from being funded by the Trump Department of Justice.
All right. Sheldon Whitehouse landed on a line about the slush fund deal that was made. And here is Cory Booker, Senator Cory Booker of New Jersey.
This country has been caught in tax cheating. No president in the history of this country has been caught in tax cheating more than this one. A Pulitzer Prize winning documentation of his tax cheating came out in 2018. Pulitzer Prize. Donald Trump said, I'm going to sue you. It's all wrong. That suit was thrown out because the president is a tax cheat. But it didn't stop with that. He was a tax cheat with his nonprofit as well. He created a so-called charity, but what did he do with that charity? It was cited by the state of New York for self-dealing, for tax cheating, and was shut down. We have a known arsonist, and we have just in this committee given him a whole barrel full of gasoline to light on fire our tax laws and have no accountability for the conflagration. This is so ridiculous that we are sitting back here and allowing this to happen. A president that we know is a tax cheat. That is a fact. That is a fact. We have now just given him an immunity to his tax cheating. Here's the thing, Mr. Chairman.
Wow. There you go. Senator Cory Booker on fire there. And now I want to get to some commentary here about all of this from Stuart Stevens on MS Now. I really like this. He's a former Republican, one of the few never Trumper kinds that I really like. And he's written a whole book basically apologizing. And he's, I think, a pretty good communicator for an old coot. Here he is.
Cornyn and Tillis are never going to run again. And what's in it for them? The thing that astounds me about these moments is most politicians have pretty big egos, which that's okay. So do athletes, God knows writers, do musicians. That's fine. Why don't they see how they look? Like how humiliating it is for someone like Cornyn, who was on the Supreme Court of Texas, highly respected, a former attorney general. First, he's defeated by a guy he would have put in jail.
Ken Paxton.
Yeah, Ken Paxton. How'd that work out? John, you could have stayed who you were. And now he's saying stuff that were he on the other side, he would rip apart the argument. He's a very smart guy. And why? You're going to live the rest of your life and this is going to be your big moment, last big moment. And I think all these guys are only going to be remembered. All the stuff they think they'll be remembered for, I think it's like segregation. They're only going to be remembered for Trump. Nobody remembers the bridges that Jim Eastland built or the loans he got for like this. He was a segregationist. And I think that's how this whole generation of Republican senators are going to go down.
Oh, I hope Stuart Stevens is right about that. Okay. Well, that was great. You know what? I'm out of time. That's it. Sorry. No more clips. That's the clip show for today. And for those of you listening on the podcast, now it's time to get to my conversation with the great Glenn Kirshner and my interview with Joan Esposito. You can watch that clip show on YouTube and Substack, hopefully elsewhere. Trying to get it posted every day. Thank you for your support. And I interviewed Glenn Kirshner on Substack. You can watch that over there as well. Should be up on YouTube. Well, this whole episode is now. So there you go. Glenn is a former federal prosecutor, and I met him in our days at MSNBC. We became really good friends. He's invited me to do his Justice Matters event every year since he started it, and it's going to be next weekend, I think, in Washington, D.C. Yeah, the 15th, I believe. So looking forward to being back down there with him, and it's always a great time when I talk to Glenn. Lots of things to talk with him about. He is an expert on so many of these legal issues, which is generally what I stick to. But I love these first 5 minutes of conversation, too. We had a good bit of fun before we got into it. Let's do it right now. You can follow him on all the social media platforms, support him on Substack and YouTube. Let's do it right now with Glenn Kirshner.
Justice does matter. Look who it is, ladies and gentlemen. The one, the only Glenn Kirshner. Look, I've got my award so you can't see it.
Justice Warrior Award. Look at that thing. That's a beauty. That's a beauty right there. You know who else has one of those?
Frank Fligluzzi.
You know who else?
Harry Dunn.
You know who else?
D's Nuts.
Robert De Niro.
Oh, De Niro's got one.
I believe he nestles it right between his two Oscars. I'm not sure about that, but
this is the only thing that I have in common with Robert De Niro. Thank you very much. I'm very excited for your subscriber event coming up.
Yeah, can't wait.
I heard you had cyclospora. Is that true? Are you okay?
What is that? Is that the lettuce thing that makes you blow up in all the wrong ways? Is that the...
Well, let's not joke about it. A couple people died, but let's also still joke about it because we don't know them. And it was like explosive diarrhea. It's terrible. I never heard of it until RFK was in charge. I blame him.
Yeah, I have not done a deep dive into that topic, nor will I be.
I hope you don't ever deep dive into cyclospora. Do you clean your lettuce? Do you clean your produce?
I do, and I just started with the the vinegar with that. Then you do the baking soda, and then I'm thinking about buying one of those little things that like emits ions. I don't know what the hell ions are, and you put it in, and it's I don't know. I'm going to try to do that too.
No, but really, you're washing your produce with vinegar and baking, so you really go through that?
I do. No, to be honest, I do it with the berries. I do it with strawberries and blueberries. Listen, not to get heavy, but my family is replete with cancer, and so I'm like, listen, I am going to fill myself, full of antioxidants every damn day. So I live on blueberries 3 times a day because I'm going to try to stave off the cancer developing as long as I possibly can.
Well, that's great. I'm glad to hear that you're making these healthy choices. But, although I guess that's why you got to clean those berries, because you're trying to eat antioxidants in the form of berries to stave off cancer is the phrase you went with. But if you don't clean them, then the pesticide. I can't see you eating berries. You're so masculine. It seems like
oh, dude, you can find me like grazing like a deer in the backyard. I'm telling you. Conjures up an image, doesn't it?
Is there any video of you grazing in your backyard?
I got a hell of a, if you would ever come down and see me, I got a hell of a vegetable garden out back. I really do.
Man, I don't know how you have time for everything because you're posting all these great videos as well. So
that's my Zen place, that vegetable garden.
I love that. Yeah, mine too. I have been overrun by terrorists the last few years, but I didn't know you were such a gardener. I'm very impressed. I will come down now.
Good.
I'm going to stay with you for so long.
I didn't say stay with me. No.
I'll be there for so long at your place that one day you'll wake up and you'll be like, listen, the berries are gone. You're gone. It's too much. We can't host you any longer.
I know you're a little too enamored of my wonderful wife, so I'm not going to have you stay over. No.
My understanding is the feeling is mutual, but I don't want to get into it. All right. The way you talk about your wife publicly gives the rest of us hope. So I like
she's my better 3/4, and I'm with gusts up to 7/8. I mean, she's remarkable.
One more thing before we get into all the headlines of the day, the justice that does matter, is do you realize that you're someone who looks like a lot of people? I keep feeling like I see you everywhere. This is like a bald pink guy with a white goatee is a pretty common look.
Yeah. Us white guys are a dime a dozen these days. The bald head, the goatee. I think I'm beginning to look like Ermin Trout from Better Call Saul. The old fraggly way. I swear to 10 years from now, I will be Ermin Trout.
I feel like a lot of guys who look like you are also MAGA. So you're so famous now that I bet you people that look like you, people walk up to them and go, "Oh my God, Justice Matters, Glenn Kirshner," and they're like, "What? Dude, get back off, freak!"
Oh, that's funny. That's funny. I think maybe once I was given a hard time. Somebody walked up to me, but it was civil. We got to talk about issues. I don't know that I, changed his mind. But I will say, I think the people, if they do tend to recognize me, which I got more when I was on MSNBC, but I still get quite a bit in like Costco and Wegmans. I'm not kidding. It's these gracious, wonderful people who are scared shitless with respect to what's going on in our country. And they're like, please just keep fighting the good fight. And that to me, Pete, is so energizing and motivating.
It's also because you stand behind a kiosk at Costco in a Justice Matters shirt serving samples.
I put the sticker right on my head here so everybody sees it. Yeah.
Let's get into those things that you could talk about in a way that very few can. First of all, I don't want to spend a lot of time on it. You can talk about this. I know you made it like a 4-hour video on it, but it's important that we did get to several issues. This reflecting pool thing with Jeanine Pirro in this case that she brought. And today, Stupid says to a reporter apparently that, he scolds her. She failed. What was the exact quote that he said about her? But he's mad that Jeanine Pirro failed. But even Jeanine Pirro can't indict all of these different people that they keep wanting him to indict. And what do we need to know about the DC Circuit or these grand juries or these cases, specifically this one? Because this is a pretty embarrassing failure, it would seem, with a high profile.
It's both embarrassing, Pete, and it shows that the Trump administration is disintegrating. And that's not just wishful thinking, because I can do the Reader's Digest version. Donald Trump gives no bid contract to two of his cronies, one of whom was convicted for conspiracy to bribe a member of Congress. That's who you want to give our federal tax dollars to, right? And neither of them were competent to do the work that Donald Trump gave them the contract to do. Not surprisingly, they do the work incompetently and it all blows up. So now Donald Trump needs a fall guy. And because it can't be his decision to steer no bid contracts, which are only supposed to be given when it's basically a life or death situation and the federal government must move out right now. So he's got to blame it on somebody. So he comes up with the boogeyman of vandals. They're jumping in there with knives and box cutters and, I don't know, chainsaws, and they're cutting and they're hacking and it's all a bunch of horse shit, right? But now he can't give up the con. He can't give up the lie, because if he does, then the responsibility falls squarely on him for, him squandering nearly 20 million of our tax dollars. So what happens is even Jeanine Pirro, as you say, can't successfully prosecute the 67-year-old Olympic canoeist, David Hearn, who was riding his bicycle near the reflecting pool. And he was curious and he's like, let me feel this piece of blue liner. And they slapped the cuffs on him. So, but you know what? She did indict him based on no evidence. And then this is the ugliest motion to dismiss I've ever read in my life. And I was a prosecutor for 30 years, because the motion said, it's the Department of the Interior's fault, because they didn't give us the evidence that showed that this was a product of a, quote, botched install job and not the product of vandalism. It's their fault, therefore. To which I say to Jeanine Pirro, no, Jeanine, it's your job to investigate the case and only present it to the grand jury if there is solid, admissible, credible evidence that it was vandalism. You can't point the finger at another government agency and say, well, they told me
just to be clear,
it was vandalism.
Just to be clear, in your time as a prosecutor, did you ever announce an indictment based on information or another agency in the government or even person that you trusted, as opposed to, as the prosecutor, I don't know much, but you see the evidence, you have the evidence, I'm guessing, before you indict? It's so weird that is that unprecedented to blame, in this case, the Interior Department?
It is unprecedented. I'm not saying there aren't disputes between agencies, but what I'm saying is, before you ever indict something, you as the prosecutor, together with your, whether it's an FBI agent or if it's a murder case, an MPD homicide detective, you investigate the darn case and you run it to ground, and you only present it and ask the grand jury to indict somebody on the road to taking their liberty away if you have the goods, you have enough admissible evidence ultimately to prove guilt beyond a reasonable doubt at trial. They had nothing. They had DOI's, Department of Interior's word that, yeah, it's all vandalism. Well, where did the vandalism? It came from Donald Trump. But it gets so ugly now, Pete, because the way they're pointing fingers, Jeanine Pirro files the motion to dismiss, saying it was a botched install. And then Doug Burgum, the secretary of DOI, says, no, she's wrong. It was vandals. Why is he saying that? Because he's appealing to an appeasing dear leader who wants him to keep saying it was banned. And then, as you say, Donald Trump posts, Jeanine Pirro is 100% wrong. And DOI is 100% wrong, because even though Burgum is spewing this nonsense, it was the DOI investigation by actual experts that eventually revealed that it was a botched install and it was not vandalism. So Donald Trump is throwing his U.S. attorney under the bus. He's throwing his own Department of Interior employees, the experts, under the bus. It's this finger pointing, and nobody is willing to take responsibility.
Yeah, you love to see it, because Jeanine Pirro and Doug Burgum are sycophants, as is everybody, but everything that he touches dies eventually. It's like, why ever sign up if you know you're going to get embarrassed and disgraced, as he's doing to both these? But also, I'm thinking, Glenn, like, I saw that, I think it was ABC This Week, when Doug Burgum was getting pressed by George Stephanopoulos a few weeks ago about, do you have evidence that it was vandals? And I'm like, again, I've seen a movie or two. I'm no law enforcement investigator, but I'm guessing there's cameras upon cameras on the reflecting pool and everywhere else in Washington, D.C. If there was someone that made that vandalized any part of the Washington Mall, they'd be on camera. You'd have it as evidence, whether or not you knew who they were. You would show that to the public, so you didn't look like an idiot, right? Like, no one ever vandalized that.
If they had any video evidence of people vandalizing the reflecting pool, they would have played it on an endless loop. The best they had were cameras from a way far back perspective of literally people like dipping their hand in the water. And yet, what did Jeanine Pirro say at the press conference announcing the indictment? David Hurd wrestling violently with, $1,000 worth of blue pool liner. All horseshit.
Okay, let's talk about the more important story that's kind of breaking today. Is it looks like Todd Blanche will get the votes he needs to become the Attorney General. Washington Post, Blanche's AG nomination back on track after he formally rescinds payout fund. First, there was, I think Tom Tillis said, we're not going to confirm you unless you meet with the Epstein survivors. He did. They weren't too happy with the meeting. They were very public about how disappointed it was and how they felt disrespected. Then Tom Tillis and John Cornyn, two Republican senators, say, hey, we're not going to vote for you unless you put it in writing that this fund is dead. And so apparently he put it in writing today. He's going to get the votes. Do I have the news right? Is that the story so far?
You have the news right. I hope he's not going to get the votes, but I fear he is, at least out of committee, and I assume before the full Senate. But this is a shell game. If our viewers know what a game of three-card Monty is, I know you do. This is where, either think about the three cups with the ball underneath, but the confidence man, the con man, is always palming another ball, and it's misdirection, and it's a fraud, and it's a scam. That's what Todd Blanche has just done. But let me start with the Epstein thing, because I'm glad you raised that. This is a variation on the same theme, right? I think it was Tillis who said, I'm not voting you out of committee. You haven't met with the Epstein survivors. You could almost see Todd Blanche saying, all right, I'll meet with the damn survivors if that's what it takes to get me confirmed. And he met with the survivors, and they said he couldn't have been more dismissive or disrespectful the way he has all along. Remember, he was also the guy who violated federal law by outing their names and identifying information when he was releasing some of the Epstein files. That's a violation of the Epstein Files Transparency Act. That endangered the lives and re-victimized Epstein's victims. But he checked that box. Okay, I met with him. What's next? They're like, okay, you got this stupid cop beaters fund. You want to pay $1.8 billion for the people who attacked the Capitol on Donald Trump's orders. We're not, if you don't get rid of that, we're not going to support your nomination. So I printed it out and I've read it a couple of times, and it is such a con game, because here's what he says. And Pete, we have to talk about this against the backdrop of a federal judge in Florida, Kathleen Williams, who has already ruled in the case in which Donald Trump sued himself and this weaponization fund was created. She ruled that the settlement agreement is invalid. It is dead. It has no legal effect because it was a product of collusion. It was a manipulation of the courts, and it was essentially a fraud. It's dead. It doesn't exist. Well, you know what Todd Blanche just did? He said, okay, based on the settlement agreement, I created the weaponization fund by this earlier memo. I am now rescinding that memo. In his next breath, Pete, he says, but the other part of the settlement agreement where I bestowed, basically immunity on Donald Trump and his family members and his businesses for tax audits and by implication tax prosecutions, if those audits had found anything, that was kind of funky in there, that remains. So he hasn't even acknowledged that a federal court has 100% invalidated the entire settlement agreement. Wow. So this doesn't mean anything that he said, oh, okay, that piece of the settlement agreement, I'm going to rescind. But of course, he will reserve the right to revive it in the future because he can, because he hasn't acknowledged that the whole settlement agreement is legally invalidated by a federal court.
Oh, man. So there's more shoes to drop on this settlement agreement, but that immunity issue is also just something that I guess it gets undercover because we're so overwhelmed. But the fact that they even made the audacity to say for future, crimes against or concerns about taxes or whatever was written in there.
What he said is this, so all of this tax shield that he bestowed upon Donald Trump and his family, the tax shield, it doesn't have prospective effect. So if Donald Trump commits tax crimes in the future, this doesn't apply. But everything before that, it does. It's not quite cradle to the grave permission for Donald Trump to commit tax crimes. It's only up until the date. But the whole thing is now legally invalid. I recognize Trump has appealed that, but at the moment, the court ruling stands and it is invalid. So Blanche can't continue to prop up other parts of the settlement agreement.
Okay. Well, the other issue I'm confused about is what is going on with the remaining Epstein files, and what is our friend Katie Fang's role in this?
Katie Fang, first of all, is a justice warrior, and why corporate media, legacy media, didn't opt to bring a lawsuit saying we're going to assert our First Amendment constitutional freedom of the press rights because we have a federal government that is supposed to abide by a law that says publicly disclose all of the Epstein files, and they're violating that law every minute of every day, and they have been since December 19th, which was the deadline for full disclosure. Katie Fang said, I'm not just going to sit on my hands like corporate media is, and she sued Todd Blanche. She sued Todd Blanche to simply comply with federal law, and so she could access the materials as an independent journalist that she has a constitutional right to access. And so Judge Emmett Sullivan, who was also the judge who presided over Mike Flynn's case and took him to task for as long as he could, said, listen, put up or shut up. Either, give the files over. And there are 5 categories of files that Katie Fang sued to get access to. And basically Todd Blanche said, I ain't giving over anything. And so the judge said, fine, I'm ordering you to deliver unredacted versions in a number of these categories to me, so I can see whether you're full of you-know-what, Todd, or whether you're being straight with the court and the American people. And it's in the capable hands right now of Judge Emmett Sullivan, and we're waiting to hear from him as to what he finds.
So, wow. So she did it just as a member of the media through press freedom. That's where she had standing. She said It's almost like a FOIA request.
Yeah. And FOIA requests are fruitless because they're not going to comply with FOIA. They're not going to turn things over when you make a Freedom of Information Act request. And that issue was actually handled by Judge Sullivan. So listen, right now, I'll tell you, don't sleep on Judge Sullivan. He's something of a lion, and what he really, I've appeared before him when I was a federal prosecutor. I think the world of him. And if he catches a federal prosecutor, a Department of Justice attorney, playing games or not being fully candid with the court, as we have an ethical obligation to do, he is going to take them to task. We may finally see our first contempt coming out of a court, depending on what he finds in these unredacted Epstein files.
Also, just want to ask you about that case against the New York Times. The New York Times broke a story about the the plane that was gifted from another country, the Qatari Air Force One plane. They broke a story that there were issues with it around safety. And so the Trump administration was like, who told them? We want to know who told them. And we've seen this in the past from previous presidential administrations. There's some history and precedent with this, right? The Pentagon Papers and other administrations saying, we're going to subpoena this news outlet because we want to know who is leaking that information. But the Constitution gives protections to journalists and their sources. So explain what happened with this case, because it was a kind of classic one of these issues, or was it different and worse than things we've seen administrations demand in the past?
I can't even give you a hierarchy of what is the most egregious abuse of the rule of law in the Constitution. There are so many. But what happened here was they had incompetent DOJ lawyers who had no idea what they were doing. And just to summarize, the law in this area, when the government wants to subpoena a reporter and try to get at their sources, the law says the Department of Justice must exhaust all other investigative avenues before they finally resort to subpoenaing a reporter. And the Department of Justice, the attorneys who handled this, did nothing but throw some subpoenas, not only at New York Times reporters, but get this. They subpoenaed the mother of one of the New York Times reporters. They subpoenaed two of the spouses of two of the New York Times reporters. And when the judge threw out those subpoenas as basically improper and abuses and a violation of the law that sets out how you are to handle such subpoenas, litigation in such cases, the judge said, I'm throwing these out. And I think I'm going to give the Department of Justice some time to consider a more thoughtful approach to this. And then when the judge pressed them on why in the hell, I'm paraphrasing, did you subpoena a mother of a journalist and spouses of journalists? And I swear, I'm not making this up, Pete. Here was their explanation. Oh, we didn't intend to include those family members in our investigative efforts, but we were moving too quickly and we mistakenly subpoenaed them.
Wow.
Does anybody believe that? If I were the judge, I would say, let me get this straight. You drafted and executed and delivered, you served these subpoenas on the New York Times journalists. And then because you were moving too fast, you somehow inadvertently subpoenaed mothers and spouses too. Is that what I hear you arguing? It's beyond laughable, Pete. These people, and these people are going to be in front of their state bar investigative committees for disbarment for like years to come. And I think the membership in the Donald Trump disbarred attorneys club is going to explode. Because, right now it's Rudy Giuliani and John Eastman and Kenneth Chesebro and Jeffrey Clark, from part one of the Trump nightmare that we've lived through. And so the Bondi and Blanche, so many others are going to end up, I believe, ultimately being disbarred.
Yeah, it's interesting. I saw somebody just posted a list of the former lawyers who'd been disbarred, but I feel like most of them had to do with the election and whatever they did around that. But this is like, you're talking about lawyers that are currently at the Department of Justice who filed these frivolous subpoenas. People's names we don't know, those people could be disbarred, lower ranking?
Absolutely. I mean, listen, the leadership will not step up and take responsibility for any of this. This is just a completely corrupt and soulless and hollow Department of Justice. It is a hot mess.
Before I let you go, you've done a bunch of different videos on YouTube and your work here on Substack and everywhere else about election interference. You're talking to all kinds of different election security experts. Just give me top line concerns or who you've talked to or what you're looking at or most concerned about for this upcoming election, because different people have different opinions, but I'm feeling somewhat safe about the fact that these elections are run by states, certainly the blue state elections. And if you try to intimidate us, that's only going to turn us out even more. So I know what they're thinking about doing. I know what they're talking about doing. What are you hearing from the people you're talking about? What is your biggest concern?
So first of all, remember that Trump tried a whole bunch of nonsense in advance of the 2020 election when Remember, he's having people like pull out mailboxes and like, trying to get the postal service to interfere in the delivery about. He tried. And then, of course, and he had the fake elector scheme, and he had obviously the Capitol attack. And Pete, it all failed. It all failed spectacularly. But Donald Trump is trying to do it again. And it's so ham-handed and transparent. Again, the Postal Service shouldn't be delivering mail-in ballots, and I'm going to send troops to the polls. There's a federal law that is literally titled Troops to the Polls, and it is against federal law. I won't get into and listen, here is, like you, I am somewhat optimistic. I don't want to be Pollyanna about it, but he couldn't accomplish it the first time, and he's even more desperate now. He's going to be more ham-handed now.
And to give you a little bit more hope, the reason why he can't accomplish things is the same reason why Jeanine Pirro couldn't indict the old white Olympic canoeist, and that's because they're not that good at the job. We're so lucky that so many of these authoritarian losers that are in this administration are not good at it. I don't know how many people you would need and what kind of conspiracy organization you would need to do whatever they want to do with these elections. But I just don't think they're going to have the foot soldiers, much less the people that are going to want to put their names, that are going to want to do this kind of thuggish stuff. I don't think.
And Trump's not on the ballot, remember. So people are not going to flood the polls because they're MAGA, right? So, and here's the thing, the blue state leadership, the governors, the attorneys general, they are preparing for federal interference in their elections. The courts are preparing. Nonprofit organizations already have the motions to be filed, either right in advance of Election Day or at 8 a.m. when the polls open on Election Day, if he tries to send ICE agents to the polls or pull this kind of shit. And I think this is all just a sign of desperation by Trump. I don't think he's going to pull it off. He's going to make things miserable. He's going to make things uncomfortable. He's going to make things bumpy. But what we can't let him do is deter us from going to the polls like you. And listen, I think the red states are hurting right now, courtesy of Donald Trump's, unconstitutional war and him focusing on ballrooms and arches and reflecting pools and UFC fights, none of which is making, the people of America any safer, any more able to buy food or put gas in their car or afford health insurance. You know what? He's not going to try to interfere in the red states. And guess what? Some of those red states are going to hurt him because of how he's been hurting them. Yep. We are going to take the midterms. Of that, I am pretty damn confident.
Yeah, I feel the same way. And I feel like that a lot of these concerns are valid and we should talk about them, but we should be optimistic and we should trust in a lot of the leaders that are doing their best to not be embarrassed on Election Day that somehow things go badly, especially in these blue states. All right, sir. Oh, gosh, it's so great to be in your presence and your washed berries to learn about some of...
That sounded vaguely obscene.
We look like two washed berries is what somebody said.
Yeah, a couple of non-distinct white guys is what we
old white hamsters. Thank you, everybody, for watching live. You're mostly Glenn's fans, followers, supporters. I'd love
Not mostly. Let's be honest.
Oh, you're huge over here on the Substack. I've just started. I'm a baby Substacker, so please follow me and join me.
Yes, follow Pete. What people need to know is Pete is a remarkable interviewer, and he interviews people across all spectrums. I'm a rule of law guy, right? But he, brings in some of the greatest experts on things like parenting. Stuff that is really important to all of us.
Thank you.
And you're a great interviewer. You let people run, but you also ask them the questions that I think the viewers want to hear answers to. And I'm not just blowing smoke. You're an expert. You're an expert interviewer, Pete.
Say more.
I'm done.
Glenn Kirshner, everybody. Thank you very much for watching. We'll talk to you later. Bye-bye. This is great. I'm aroused. All
right, there goes Glenn Kirshner. Go follow him. Go support him on Patreon. Go subscribe on Substack and YouTube. And now I've also got my conversation with Joan Esposito, whose show I appear on from time to time. I think this is my third or fourth appearance on her show. I always enjoy it. She makes me feel smart and cool. It airs originally on WCPT AM 8:20 in Chicago. It's a Chicago-based show. You can find it on Heartland Signal and anywhere you get your podcast. Joan Esposito Live, local and progressive. I kept some of that radio branding on here. And I also just want to share, because at the beginning she mispronounced a word and said horse. And I did a horse impersonation that was dead on, and she didn't hear it because I was on Zoom and just plowed ahead. So just for that, I want you to hear this moment at the top. I really nailed it, and it fell flat. Maybe her listeners heard it. All right. Always fun talking with this really awesome legend out in Chicago. Let's do it.
He is a stand-up comic, news commentator, a host, maybe a horse too. I don't know.
Yes.
Host,
Yes.
journo activist, moderator, and more. Pete, I withdraw the horse thing. I don't know where that came from.
Joan, it's good to be back.
Sandwiches.
It's good to be back, Joan. Thank you very much.
Great to have you back. You keep an eye on everything that is going on politically right now. And we have a cornucopia of things that we could talk about. We could talk about Todd Blanche. We could talk about Iran. We could talk about Max Miller. We could talk about lots of different things. What is really drawing your attention these last few days?
Well, all of those issues are ones that I've been paying attention to for a while. They matter. They're very impactful. But I've been paying a lot of attention to the progressive movement as well. It's really interesting to see what's happening with the Democratic Party, with the rise of the DSA, with the kind of different alliances that are being formed, the litmus tests that are unfortunately, I think, in effect in too many places, but the outcomes of the elections. And I think what's most interesting is when actual rubber meets the road, if anything gets done. And what we've seen in New York is really exciting with Mayor Mamdani. It's not just...
He really has put his money where his mouth is so far, and he hasn't done it in a way that's going to raise taxes. I mean, he's come through for some of his promises and found a way to make them financially make sense. I don't know what you'd have to complain about there. Do you share the belief that is, I don't know how true it is, but it's being written about a lot, that Democrats better be careful. They better be careful. You know, too many, if you elect people who say they're Democratic socialists, you're going to lose in the general election because they're just too radical.
I think that could be the case in some states. I think it very well could be the case in some states. I do worry about that because winning is the most important thing, and you want to try to probably nominate the most electable candidate. But at the same time, we've seen it all now, Joan. I mean, we have seen it all. And I'm one that's kind of ready to throw caution to the wind. I was really inspired by Kamala Harris when she stepped up and ran. And I've been really inspired by some of these young progressive candidates that have stepped up and run as well, especially the younger women and people of color, which I think are the base of the party now, or could be. But I think that people like El Said in Michigan are generational talent. I mean, this guy is so good. I think Pete Buttigieg is so talented. I have obviously Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. We already talked about Mamdani and so many others that I think are really exciting. And what we need to have a conversation about, obviously, is the role of government in our lives. That's what politics is. That's what these conversations are about. And it would be amazing if this generation of political leaders, of those that we've elected to, do what's in the public's interest, actually use government for good and change our lives for the better and make things more affordable, create more opportunity, more security, and all the things that government is supposed to do. That's the fight. And they've got an opportunity to actually put their plans in action. And I'm really excited about that.
You said something that I've been talking about. Is a Democratic Socialist candidate the right candidate everywhere? Absolutely not. The candidate needs to reflect the voters. If it's a truly conservative district, maybe a conservative Democrat is the best way to win an elected office. And I think the idea that somehow because a few Democratic Socialists have been elected, clearly because that's what the voters wanted, there's somehow a fear that every race in every state is now going to be the Democratic Party is going to be fronted by somebody who's just too radical for the voting public. And I think that's nonsense. And one thing that bothers me is, many years ago when it seemed like there were only conservative Democrats and middle of the road Democrats, I was always told when I would complain about a conservative Democrat and how they, like they were, pro-life or something. And I was always told, it's up to the voters and we are a big tent.
Yeah.
So we're a big tent. But now that the shoe's on the other foot and we still have the middle of the road Dems and, like you said, people who are sick and tired of stern letters and white papers and want somebody who's actually going to do things. Now it seems like I'm not being told vote blue no matter who. Now it's like, oh, we have to get these people out or we have to minimize their influence. Wait a minute. What happened to the big tent, Pete?
Yeah, no, I think those are all really good points. And you and I have been paying attention and covering these issues for a long time. And so I think that we've got a fairly good perspective on it. But, I also hate labels, Joan. I hate all of the labels. I hate the Overton window, which is the measure of where you are in the political spectrum. Are you far left? Are you far right? I certainly think that the socialist label isn't very helpful. But when you talk about and listen to these candidates who are running and the platforms and policies that they're proposing, it doesn't seem radical at all to me. It doesn't seem radical one bit if you compare it to an FDR Democrat. Certainly doesn't seem radical to compare it to how Canadians or Norwegians or Israelis or Japanese or Australians have their social safety net, how they are able to afford college. My daughter's going to college in Amsterdam. She's about to leave. I'm devastated personally for me and my interests. But, you give them roots, you give them wings. She's going to the University of Amsterdam because she's an EU citizen. My ex-wife is an Italian citizen, EU citizen. It's so much cheaper to go to college in Europe, especially if you have citizenship there. Is it better? Is it as good? Hell yes, it is. It's preposterous, the cost of college, the cost of healthcare, the issues of wage disparity, and so many other issues. And when we talk about these policies, specifically healthcare, overwhelmingly Americans agree with what some people refer to as radical, because it might be a more progressive Democrat that's standing up for it. Overwhelmingly Americans agree it's not radical at all to the rest of the world. It is what brings them health and happiness, if you ask me.
Absolutely. 2 points that you've made, I think that are perfect. The fact that labels and words, descriptions, progressive, liberal, socialist, they mean different things to different people. And looking up the Wikipedia definition of a democratic socialist and get this long list of ideas doesn't help you. You need to go to the person who's running and say, hey, what do you think about this? What is it that you think you want to accomplish? What are your ideas? And, the one thing that I think people misunderstand about socialism, it's not a rejection of capitalism. It just believes government should help people. And, didn't that used to be what we thought about government?
Yes,
I don't know.
of course.
I'm older than you, but when I was little, it seemed like that was the idea.
Well, that's why I said FDR Democrats, the New Deal and all of the policies that were brought in, Social Security, Medicare. It's interesting. Medicare, a health policy expert friend of mine, Dr. Aaron Carroll, is one of the smartest guys in the world, in my opinion, one of the best healthcare experts in the country. Whenever he would talk about Medicare, he'd always joke about how people are supportive of Medicare for everybody 65 and older. For everybody 65 and older, America is as American as apple pie. But if you wanted to give Medicare to people under 65, that's socialism. Medicare for all is a single payer system, and we are pretty close to achieving that. I think it's probably the most popular issue that these progressive Democrats are running on. And the other people, everybody else doesn't have any solutions. I mean, I've covered healthcare reform and health policy for years, and I firmly believe that Medicare for all is something that we absolutely deserve. And then people ask, can we afford it? Hell yeah, we can afford it. It's a huge undertaking.
Like $1 billion? What if it costs $1 billion a day? Oh, wait, no, we only spend that on wars. I'm sorry. Never mind, Pete.
There's so much that needs to be done to the healthcare industry to regulate it in ways that Obamacare never could, from the pharmaceutical industry to the health insurance industry to all of the rest, the hospitals. And
that needs to be done. That you need to bring down the cost of care. And this is a conversation we have to have because it's unaffordable and it's not radical at all. It's not radical at all to the rest of the world. The rest of the world, if you travel, if you know anybody that lives in any other country in the world, any civilized, industrialized country, they think we are absolutely crazy that this is the healthcare paradigm that we live in, that a huge percentage of Americans, the leading cause of personal bankruptcy is because you couldn't afford your healthcare bills for you or someone that you love, by the way. And the worst nightmare kind of happened to me when it comes to healthcare coverage. I lost my corporate job and I lost my health insurance with it. My wife didn't have health insurance. So what were we supposed to do? Thank God for Obamacare. There were subsidies on the open market, but it's not great care. It's not a great policy. The bottom line is you should not have to be stuck with a job you don't like just because of the health insurance. And that is only in America when it comes to civilized countries. The rest of the world is laughing at us and pitying us for our ridiculously broken healthcare system that serves very few.
There was a story that brought this to life recently in the news where a group of guys were hiking and one of them fell and his walking stick went through his body. And you could see the picture. It goes in one side, comes out the other.
I saw this story.
And he got a lot of attention because he walked 6 hours to get down to a place where he could get help because he knew his bill would be $6,000 to $10,000 if he had a helicopter come rescue him off of the trail.
Well, that's an extreme example.
$6,000 to $10,000, and he didn't want to spend it, so he walked down with this stick through his body.
A couple of things to learn from that incident. First of all, you said he was with a group of guys. He was alone. So I think number one.
No, there were two other guys.
Oh, there were?
One walked in front of him and one walked
I stand
behind
corrected.
him.
I was going to say you need friends.
Front,
hike with friends.
And whenever they would come upon other groups, especially groups with children, he would warn them. The guy in front would warn them, my friends had an accident. It looks pretty bad. You might want to close your kid's eyes. And the other friend walked behind him just in case he collapsed.
Jesus, this story just got so much more interesting. The point you're making is that he couldn't afford to be medevaced. Yes. But that's an extreme example. I mean, a lot of people don't call an ambulance when they need to call an ambulance because of, and by the way, if you know anybody who works on ambulances, they compete to get to the patient. They try to beat each other. The whole system is so embarrassingly broken. And the point, though, is getting back to Democrats, it's not extreme. What the DSA and what left-wing progressive Democrats want and have wanted for generations is a public option, is Medicare for all, is a more affordable healthcare system that is also more accessible and better quality for everybody. That is not radical. That is a mainstream, middle-of-the-road issue. And I would argue many of these other DSA ideas are as well. Mainstream, middle-of-the-road issues. They're not radical. They're certainly not radical to the rest of the world. They're just new to Americans, or their old ideas come again. Like I said, FDR had some pretty progressive ideas that were considered radical at the time. And now they're policies that Americans would vote you out of office if you ever decided to do away with it.
Yeah. I'm speaking to Pete Dominick. You may have watched his podcast. He also does a lot of writing. It is called Stand for Something, Be the Change You Want in the World, StandUpWithPete.com. We are going to take a break and be right back after this.
Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive on WCPT 820.
I'm speaking with Pete Dominick. Pete, do you do your live interviews on Substack?
Yeah, I do them on Substack and YouTube. It depends on who the guest is. If they're on Substack, I'll do it there. Otherwise, YouTube. But I'm on both at Stand Up with Pete. So find me there.
So if you're on Substack, you can only talk to other people who are on Substack?
They have to have an account. They don't have to be posting or have a brand or anything. They just have to have a Substack account. So as a reader or a subscriber to other people's, you just have to have the app or have an account so I can invite you to join me on that app.
Who was your most interesting guest recently?
Oh, man, I love Celeste Headley. Do you know Celeste? She's a former public radio person herself and NPR personality, author, and now professor, one of the smartest women I know. I just talked to her for today's show. And Glenn Kirshner is a former federal prosecutor. I just talked with him as well. Those are just two of my most recent guests. But, you know, I've been talking to people every day for weeks, for years, for over 15 years. I try to find the smartest people I can to explain what is going on these days, because every day is so filled. It's such an emotional roller coaster if you're paying attention to the news, and how do you not, that we need to make sense of it, and we need to also increasingly understand what is reality with the increase of AI and dishonesty and people doing and saying things just to get clicks. You get misled all the time. It's just embarrassing, humiliating, and most importantly, it's not in the public's interest. And so we try to meet every day and talk about these issues and try to still hold on to reality. How are you keeping your grasp on reality in these times, Joan?
Well, I always say to my audience that especially on Fridays, they have to find something that brings them peace or brings them joy, whether that's just, reading a book or going to a movie or going out to dinner, whatever it is, because you have to remember why you're in this fight and what it is you're fighting for. And I think if you have your nose to the grindstone too much, you forget about that. You forget about why it is you're doing all this and making these sacrifices. And that's always my advice to people is, you have to balance it. You want to do what you can do. And if you're shut in, you can get your computer out and you can send some emails to your representatives. If you can make phone calls, you can do a lot of different things. Hey, you can join me and talk on the radio.
You said something.
A lot of people do that.
I want to ask you something, follow up on something you just said. You said it's important to take breaks and find joy and remind yourself of why you're in the fight, why you're trying to make a difference in the world. Recently, I was talking to someone I didn't know very well, and I was telling this person who's a physician about what I do for a living. And, I was describing myself as an advocate, an activist, a journalist, a comedian. But I mostly now identify as an advocate, trying to make the world a better place, trying to be the change I want to see in the world. But I wanted to ask you and anybody asking themselves, why do you care? Why do you do the work to, in this case that we're in now, preserve whatever we have left of democracy? Why do you do things, take action to make the world a little better place for people who might not be you? A lot of the policies that I've advocated for over the years don't necessarily benefit me directly. They might benefit my family or my kids. But so many of the policies that I care deeply about are things like climate or reproductive rights or LGBT equality. Why do I care about those issues in particular? And I have really solid answers for those questions, but I wonder what people think when, I told this woman what I was doing for a living. She goes, "That's not real. It's not real work." And I thought, well, it's if someone's wealthy, they have less to be concerned with, I suppose, about issues that affect most people. And this person was very wealthy, but I didn't, get into it. I just thought it was interesting because it describes a strain of Americans who are apathetic for any number of reasons or cynical. They don't think that we can make a difference. So why is it that you've been doing this radio show and the work that you've been doing for so long, Joan? For you, what is the purpose that you rest on?
Well, I had a vision for what the show was going to be like after Kamala Harris won. And I can tell you, Pete, it was going to be a lot more arts and culture and, things that inspire us. But when Donald Trump won again, I was determined that I was either going to do my best to keep this country from coming apart, or I was going to do my best to get behind the people who can put it back together. And this isn't very zen, but I won't let these bastards win.
Yeah, I really resonates with me the way you just said it. And it's not to some extent it's personal because certain things that happened to me, my family was targeted and local Board of Education fights. And so, yeah, I'm angry and I hold a grudge about those personal things. But I agree. Like, I don't want to let these bastards win because of what it means when they do. Because it means in particular marginalized communities, people who are living on the edges and in the shadows will suffer that much more. And I can't abide by that. I can't abide by that. I can't and never have been able to let my daughters see me do nothing. And I've also known as a parent that they're going to be watching what I do, not what I say. I mean, don't get me wrong, Joan. I'm always running my mouth about what I believe, but it's more about what I do. When I got my electric car, when I got my solar panels, that was action. That was them seeing me be more sustainable, composting, cutting down on our meat, any number of things for, say, the environment. And so it's an important thing to do as a parent as well. And letting fascists, authoritarians, white supremacists, and Christian nationalists, who are a small percentage of Americans, dominate the rest of us is not something that we are going to allow happen. It's not something we are going to stand for. And that's certainly what gets me out of the bed every morning. And I pop right up, Joan. I pop right out of bed because I got purpose. And I have to take vitamin.
I don't know if you feel this way, but I also feel a little bit of guilt because I feel like it all went to hell on my watch. How did the older generation of this country, where did we stop paying attention? Did we, what did we do? I feel like I'm a little bit responsible for the way things are, which means I have to redouble my efforts to get us back on track.
It's interesting, that perspective in terms of what you could have done differently, what we could have done differently, what our generation did or didn't do, what we're responsible for or not. I mean, I just think it's the right thing to do. I'm kind of a Stoic philosophy fan, and there's a certain righteousness, justice that I have to live by and have to try to make sure that other people see modeling this behavior, especially as a man, a white man, someone who historically in this country obviously has had all the power and the opportunity. Like, it's really important that guys like me do our best to advocate for people who aren't like us, and breaking that cycle and that network is something that I've been doing my whole life and pride myself on. And so we all can do something. I don't think there's a lot of sense in feeling guilt or living in the past. I just question what I can do today and how I can be better. And that's the question that I ask every day. And, I think a lot about history and civil rights and human rights leaders of the past, from Dr. King to Harvey Milk to so many others, that fought for black rights, gay rights, and obviously the suffrage movement for women to vote. I think a lot about those people. And I think a lot about, I'm a romantic, I guess, but like growing up, I was like, who would I have been? Who would I have been during those times? And now we know. Unfortunately, we're living in those times where rights are being taken from the LGBT community, obviously from black folks, voting rights, and from women. We're watching it happen. So now you get to answer that question. Who do you want to be? And if it's not affecting you or your family directly, I promise you it will. As Pema Chodron writes in her seminal book, When Things Fall Apart. I promise you, things will fall apart, and you're going to want to be on the right side of them. Whether you get to put them back together, I think I'd want to be on that team.
Yep, absolutely, absolutely. Pete, do you still do stand-up? Do you have any stand-up appearances scheduled that we could talk about?
Not at the moment. I'm semi-retired in a weird kind of way. I mean, I don't know how interesting this is for you or your listeners to talk about, but like my career as a comedian, basically I did everything you could do as a comic. I headlined clubs and colleges all over the country, all the festivals, TV shows. I worked for Stephen Colbert and Jon Stewart and John Oliver. I did it all and I loved it. But you can age out of it. And the pandemic and politics kind of ruined comedy for me. And then I got just so much more into speaking engagements and using my comedy and my skills in keynote addresses, as well as doing my radio show and now my daily podcast. that, and I didn't want to be on the road because it's very hard to be a good comedian and a good father because you got to work every weekend and the weekends is where parenting exists. And so, but I never stopped doing stand up until, fairly recently when part of it is like, there's so many good young people. There's so many good young people of color, women, gay people, wild cards as we call them because they're intersection. They're gay, they're a person of color, they're a little person. Like there's so much less of a barrier of entry for comedy, and there's so many more people that are way funnier than stand-up comedians just doing funny things on Instagram and TikTok. So I'm excited to see like this generation of comedians come up, and I'm sitting back and mostly watching. I may get back into it a lot more, but I'm mostly doing speaking gigs in my podcast.
Pete Dominick, you can find him on Substack. You can find him on YouTube. Pete, thank you so much for being here
Joan, it's
today.
always a pleasure to be talking with the legend. I appreciate you very much.
Yeah, in my own mind. Thank you very much, Pete.
There you go. Joan Esposito, WCPT AM 820. Hope you appreciated that conversation. Thank you for listening all the way to the end. You bumblebees are the winners. That's what you are if you listen all the way to the end. And I'm happy to have been with you one more day till Val and Julia leaves. And it's going to be a weird 48 hours in the next couple weeks and months, I guess. I appreciate all your friendship and support through it. We'll get through it. I'll get through it. We all get through it. Somehow, some way. It's the only way to go through it. Be the change you want to see. Love you. Talk to you tomorrow.
When the tyrants taunt you and the sirens tease, you better stand up. Stand up. Let the brave meet the challenge, let the weak flee. Boy, you better stand up. Stand up. When you're tired of begging, saying pretty please, that's the time you gotta finally get up off of your knees. When you can't see the forest for the burning trees, you got to stand up. Hey, you've been sitting so long, you got the creaky knees, you got to stand up. Stand up. I think you're driving wheels with leaking grease. Boy, you better stand up. Stand up. Well, there's a whole lot more of us who know what's right. They'll keep right on ignoring us if we keep sitting tight. You got to open up the window to let in some light. You got to stand up. That's right. You got to rise up. You got to stand up. You got to stare the devil straight in the eye. We got to let him know it's his turn to go. See it clear when all you hear is a lie. So get up off of your butt, get down off of your fence. And even if it ain't a very friendly audience, well, they'll begin to listen when you start making sense. And you stand up. Stand up. No need to point your rifle to defend your town. Just stand up. Stand up. You know they can't deny you what you're laying down. Boy, you better stand up. Stand up. Show your face of every color, yellow, black, red, and brown. See the place where every lost child will finally be found. There's only one thing to do before we stand our ground, and that's stand up. Stand up. Well, the founding fathers saw a land for all. They had to stand up. They had to stand up. They had a keen imagination for a crystal ball, drawing all the plans of stand up. But all they had to go on was the time they were in, with other causes for laws, and since they weren't even sin, they knew that change was gonna come before the change could begin. They had to stand up. All right, they had to stand up. We got to stand up. We got to look the devil square in the eye. We gotta let him know it's his time to go, and make it clear when all we hear is a lie. Why you lying awake wondering where the money all went? It'll be the cost of freedom that'll go unspent. You can see him flee the scene of that experiment if you stand up. All right. We got to speak up, we got to reach up, and raise your voice in every way you know how. Don't be toes up, you got to show up. Ain't no better time to do it but now. No need to pledge allegiance to no wanton tribe. Rise up, show obedience to the voice inside, and listen well and it'll tell you not to run and hide. It says stand up.